I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away.
What are you doing?
I'm in the zone.
Are you? I thought you were testing your levels.
No. I was testing your patience.
Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
Wait. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
I've been Josh this whole time.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus?
All right, man. Come on.
All right, let's start it over. Here we go.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists, and we are broadcasting from our new podcast studio.
We are. This is episode 118. It's about collecting, and 84% of you asked for it.
Wait, what?
I knew they were asking for it.
What were they asking for?
Well, actually, you and I were just talking about this before we hit the record button here. We're back in the saddle again.
Oh yeah.
Right. So before we took a little pause from social media throughout January. And actually, this episode will be out first week of February, and so we're back on social media. Hopefully, we'll spend maybe next week's episode talking a little bit about what we've learned from that whole experience. But being off of social media, before we jumped off, we put this little survey out there and said, hey, how many of you? What do you prefer? Would you prefer our in-studio podcast episodes, or do you prefer the live episodes? And the feedback we got was overwhelming, but a lot of people basically said, hey, love your live episodes, but really prefer the in-studio episodes. And so we've moved out here to Los Angeles, California. This is our first episode in our new studio space. I can't wait to share it with you all. We just had the sound panels put in here this week. That's why it sounds so crisp, so clean. And eventually we're going to add a video version of the podcast as well. We'll put that up on YouTube once we get to enough Patreon supporters. But you can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel now and get any new videos we put out there. It's just youtube.com/theminimalists. But yeah, we're back in studio, man.
Yeah, I am so thankful for our Patreon supporters, man, because if it wasn't for them, we would not have this. In fact, one of them emailed me the other day. They're like, "Can we have an interview? Can we have a tour of your new studio?"
Yeah, we should do that just for the Patreon supporters.
Yeah, definitely.
Like do some video.
We'll definitely do that.
We don't have the lighting set up in here. Actually, tomorrow we're supposed to set up some lighting. So it does. If I were to take pictures right now, even though the space looks great, it wouldn't look good on camera because we've already done some stuff. We have some lighting being installed tomorrow. The sound panels are in. We got this beautiful paint. It's just like dark gray paint and black sound panels. We've got our new studio table here in front of us. We're investing in some new equipment as well. And as soon as we reach that next threshold on Patreon, we'll have enough money to do the video version. That's really what I want to focus a lot on this year, is doing a lot more video work and putting it up on YouTube. And
you know what's the same? Podcast Sean. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Podcast Sean. He's here. He's here in the room. He's hiding his face still, so you can't see him. And we don't give him a microphone because he sounds much more intelligent than us. We don't want to sound any dumber than we actually are. So, Ryan, we're talking about collecting.
Oh, man. I love collecting.
Let me tell you.
Collecting memories.
I've been collecting viruses the last 2 months. Ever since... Ryan, in the radio biz, we call that
some weird collections before.
We call that a Segway.
You own a Segway?
Yeah, I drove it off a cliff, though. No, man, remember, so a couple episodes ago, we published our event in Nashville with Griffin House, which was great. He played a song. He's one of our favorite musicians, and the next day is when I just got deathly ill. I had hand, foot, and mouth disease, which is a virus that usually affects children. But I've been going through that mercury detox, which I got rid of mercury, but in the process, I think it really beat the hell out of my immune system, and so I've been prone to getting sick the last couple months. And I feel great today. The last 3 or 4 days, the first time I felt great in the last 2 months. I've gotten sick after sick after sick, and in fact, I'm getting my new apartment tested for mold this week just to make sure that I'm not continually getting sick because there's mold there. And so tomorrow I got some folks coming out to take a look at the mold situation. But I feel great for the first time in a while, and so I'm glad I'm not here under duress of the many viruses that I've been collecting.
Yeah, you're looking much better.
I feel a lot better. I'm sleeping, and I'm excited to be back here. And the question I have for you to kick things off before we hop into the listener questions, Ryan, is have you ever had a weird collection of anything in days of yesteryear as a youth or in your 20s?
I have a collection now.
Really?
Yeah. I've got, so when we were on tour last year, the Less Is Now tour, I guess technically we're still on that tour because we're going to Australia with it. Right.
But the North American Less Is Now tour.
So we found ourselves at all these venues, and some really amazing venues like the Wilbur, which is just like an iconic, beautiful theater.
In Boston, yeah. It's almost like, I've heard Joe Rogan explain, he's shooting his next special there at the Wilbur Theater later this year. And I heard him talk about how it's kind of like having 3 separate venues all together because there's the 3 levels, right? Yeah. And it makes it much more intimate. Even though there's, 1,100, 1,200 people there, it feels like you're talking to 3 groups of 300 or 400 people, and it makes it much more intimate than a big space like that. It's a great venue.
Yeah. So we went to all these really cool venues. The Fillmore in San Francisco, that's like an iconic theater. Bogarts in Cincinnati, very iconic. No, man. No, it's iconic for me. That was like my very first concert I ever went to. Never in a million years did I think I would be sitting backstage. Being the artist that was there,
and it smelled like weed.
It smelled like weed and body odor.
Yeah, it really did. And Bogarts was interesting.
Everyone was really nice though,
because I'd seen concerts there before. But going back there, the roof was leaking, so they had trash cans in the middle of the audience.
Dude.
It's a heavy rock venue. Yeah, and we're getting up there trying to talk about getting rid of your collections or whatever.
Right. No, it was great, man. I loved every minute of it. I mean, even sitting back there with with the strange smells going on, I was still like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm back here in the green room at Bogarts.
Yeah.
But no, so every venue we went to, we would get these backstage passes, essentially.
Yeah, right.
And they all pretty much have a similar type of look to them. They've got the name of the venue, and then they have a spot where they either put your name or whatever they put there to give you permission to go back and forth from backstage. So when I was getting these, I'm like, God, I really want to hang on to these. I'm like, but it's stupid. What am I going to do with them? Put them in a scrapbook? I'm never going to, the thought of getting a scrapbook out and sitting down with my kids and being like, oh, here's the sticker from the Fillmore. Let me tell you about the Fillmore.
Or worse, you don't even have kids, so getting other people's kids?
Right, getting other people's kids to look at it. Well, 2 things. I don't need a scrapbook to remember the Fillmore. And B, for me, I'm not saying for everyone else out there in the world, but for me, having a scrapbook it's silly for me.
Right.
So what I did though is I had this idea, because I already do this on the bottom of my longboard, is I put different band stickers and stuff, like coffee places I go to, and you get stickers, and I'll stick it on the bottom there. So that's what I did with all of these backstage passes. I didn't do it with every single one of them, but the ones that really stood out and meant a lot.
Were they stickers?
There were stickers, okay. Yeah. So that's what the backstage pass was. It was a sticker.
Okay.
You got these.
I just threw them out as soon as they handed them to me.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, you had to hold on to it.
No, I didn't. I never did. There was one venue they wouldn't let me in.
I was gonna say,
it was very confusing.
Yeah, there was one venue they did the same thing to me. But anyway, long story short, yeah. So there were stickers, and yeah, I was just like, you know what, I could totally like make use of these, and they do look really freaking cool on the bottom of my longboard. So
There you go.
So yeah, so that is it's a collection I have, and it's not intrusive. It doesn't weigh on my shoulders. I don't ever think to myself, man, I gotta arrange this sticker collection somehow. I mean, it's there. It's very unintrusive. I don't know how else to say it.
It's a trigger for memories as well. The memories obviously aren't in the stickers themselves.
Of course not.
That you didn't turn them into a cup and keep your memories in there.
Right.
Like the memories are in you, and these will allow you to trigger that in a way that doesn't actually get in the way of your overall experience. Like if you all of a sudden decided, well, I'm not even going to talk to Mariah about this. I'm just going to put all these stickers all over our floor.
Right.
And she's going to be like,
really, what are you doing?
Why are you doing this? Right. And
she's going to go, it's crazy.
It would negatively affect your household that way as well. Mm-hmm. I think back to my 20s, and so you and I both grew up poor, and I remember when I first had access to any sort of money, the first thing I started collecting was DVDs. And it was at a time where that's the way that you would rent a DVD, right? Mm-hmm. You'd go to the local Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Or we'd go, what was the place up on Deerfield Road?
Crazy Mike's, maybe?
No. That's in Missoula. A guy named Heath owned it. Video Gallery.
Video Gallery, yeah.
Yeah. We used to do NBA Jams competitions.
Didn't
up
he
there.
know karate or something?
He totally knew karate.
Like almost knocked out Jerome or something.
Yeah, my brother. Yeah. Heath was so old. I think he was 22, and he owned this.
He was so like
video
in
rental
high school.
store.
We looked up to him like, wow, he's an adult,
and he knows karate.
No,
I mean, you can't get any cooler as an adult than owning
a video
store where you rent video games and knowing karate. Oh my God.
He's still the coolest dude in my book.
So my brother was like the toughest kid in our school, but he would go up there just mesmerized that this guy knew karate. And he'd ask him to do like jump up and do kicks and stuff. Anyway, I have no idea where. I started buying DVDs instead of renting them, and I then of course had to get the sort of whatever the bookshelf equivalent of a DVD holder that mounts on the wall, and then I'm alphabetizing them, and I realized like. I remember when I got that first big commission check and I was 18 and I'm like, oh man, like I can go buy a DVD, but I don't just have to buy one. What is it? It's $150 to buy 10 DVDs? I can buy 10 DVDs. I've got $150.
Wow.
I can buy 10 DVDs.
Yeah.
And then of course like I need more and more, and then that bled over into other things. Like in my early 20s especially, I remember being a big fan of Al Pacino. And like especially his obscure movies like Panic in Needle Park and I want to say Sicario, but that's a new film.
You don't have to impress me with your obscure Al Pacino movie references.
So what's the film when he says, "No, you're out of order"? Justice for All, or something like that.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So Sean's giving me the thumbs up there. Yeah. So anyway, like I'd buy movie posters of these things, and photos or scripts, signed scripts from these. Like I'd go to eBay, and like buy a signed script from one of these
wow.
films, and it'd be.
I didn't realize he did that.
$70 or something.
Yeah.
Which I could technically afford. I couldn't really because I was starting to put stuff on credit cards or whatever. But like, I'll just pay it off next month, whatever.
Right.
And then I was just buying it because I could, not because I should or I must or it's going to truly add value to my life. But I'm just going to collect this because I can collect it. Because I had been deprived for so long, I felt like the answer to that deprivation was collection. And so I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with owning those things necessarily, but what was wrong is why I was accumulating them, just because I could. And I think now that I've got a 4-year-old, she does a lot of things just because she can do them, right? She can throw something across the room. She can binge watch Daniel Tiger or Dinosaur Train, and because she can, it doesn't mean that she should do it. And
right.
As adults, we just do the same thing.
Man, that's permeated like every other culture that is trying to mimic what the Western civilization is doing. I'm being stilted right now because I'm trying not to like call out any other countries or like even talk bad about the culture, but there is this attitude of, if you can, then you should.
Yeah. If you can, then you must.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, how many times is that an answer? Oh, why did you do that? Because I can. Why did you go into the? Oh, because I can't.
But that tends to be the best answer that we come up with quite often, because it's the only honest answer.
But it seems like, looking at it from that perspective, looking at Ella, it seems like an irresponsible answer.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is irresponsible. So here's one culture we can call out because they called themselves out to me recently. I did a few interviews in Australia last month, actually back in December, and just over the phone with some different newspapers, different organs, and they were talking about the American dream permeating their borders and sort of this idea of, if I can purchase it, then I should purchase it. Bigger is better. And I don't believe that bigger is worse or better. I think it's all circumstantial, right?
Bigger is just bigger.
Right. and whether that's a bigger house or a bigger car or whatever, like, what do the circumstances dictate, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, the circumstances didn't mean I needed to get the new or the old, actually, Al Pacino movie script that's signed. I didn't need those things. In fact, I didn't even know why I wanted them. Yeah. And if I would have sat down and started asking myself some serious questions, like, why do you want this? What void are you trying to fill with this? Are you going to get any value from it? Are you actually going to sit down and read this? Are you going to appreciate it? Is it a piece of art? Or are you just celebrating the consumption? And quite often, I think that's what I was doing. I was celebrating the act of consuming, mm-hmm. and I still see that trigger in me now. And I think some of the questions we have to answer today, and we can jump into those, because I really see a reflection of myself and my own habits that I've either changed, or my own proclivities that are very difficult to change, and they always creep back into the picture. Our first question is from Romas.
There's this tug of war between wanting to have fewer but more meaningful objects in life, and then meaningful objects themselves just being a fascinating thing to celebrate for their beauty or craftsmanship or usefulness or whatever. And there's just something about multiples, a repeated pattern, that can create a kind of bigger effect. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is more than the sum of its parts. And I mean, along the ways I've grown up, I've sold my coin collection, I've given away my baseball cards, my comic book collections, so I'm not necessarily attached to these things, but I still find myself seeking out multiples of whatever, vintage pens, fountain pens, or lead soldiers, or whatever. And that seems to be more like a kind of purposeful, patterned activity with maybe a larger meaning than just a kind of blind hoarding of random stuff. So my question to you is, can you reconcile the collector's mindset with that of the minimalist?
So Ryan, the first thing I think about is, I don't really collecting is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure.
I tend not to collect things for the sake of collecting them. He used some interesting words here about multiples. And about the collection being more than the sum of its parts. And the thing that I can think of in my own life that is the only thing that I can think of that would be considered a collection might be my bookshelf. And I don't have a whole lot of books, maybe, I don't know, 50, 40. I'm not sure. I don't have a whole lot of books, but the books that I have, I do find the experience of them meaningful. I don't find the objects or the artifacts themselves meaningful. And so the first thing I would warn anyone about is nothing is inherently meaningful. Everything has only the meaning that we give it. If human beings all of a sudden were wiped off the face of the earth, they all just spontaneously combusted, all 7 billion of us, there wouldn't be meaning in those objects anymore, right? other than the meaning that we did give to it, right? And so when I think about meaning within things, it just means what is the purpose it has for me. And
Right.
those books, they serve a few purposes for me. One is I got a beautiful bookshelf, and it looks really good to have them displayed. It sort of looks like art the way that they are displayed on this bookshelf. But in addition to that, I find that they're useful because they're some of my favorite books to go back and reference and either share with other people. You know, my partner Bex, her and I were just going through the books this past week, and one of my favorite authors is a woman named Mary Carr, and she's written 3 memoirs that, I mean, I was showing Bex, like, you can open up to any page, and it's just gorgeous writing. It's like poetic. And it's about these sort of downtrodden scenes. You know, a lot of this stuff takes place in West Texas and sort of trailer park, downtrodden, but she finds the true beauty just in the sentence structure there. And me being able to pull that book out and show Bex that right there, that experience and that sharing is meaningful. The artifact sitting there on the shelf, if it's just sitting there, it's not meaningful. It's just there.
Yeah.
I'm not using it.
Yeah, I think the question that you raised, where, you know, is this meaningful for me? That's the question. I mean, you know, what he's asking here is, you know, can one reconcile the minimalist mindset with collecting? The short answer is yes. Like, you absolutely can. But the way you get there, it's not because Josh and I have come up with some minimalist rule, or we have looked to the ancient minimalist philosophers and we're using their rules. What Josh and I are really trying to do is help people decide for themselves. So the question that he should be asking here isn't, well, can one reconcile? The question he should be asking is the collections that I have, that I desire to have, are they adding more value to my life, or are they adding more stress? Okay. Now, him asking this, to me, it doesn't sound like he's stressing out. It sounds like he has a collection that he really enjoys.
Right.
And he's looking for permission to have it. Or
he has a conflict, it sounds like.
Yeah, there is some kind of conflict. My answer is if you enjoy that collection, if it truly is adding value, like the stickers on my longboard, if that longboard got shredded somehow on accident, or, you know, I lost it, or someone stole it,
right,
I wouldn't miss it, man.
Sure.
I mean, and we've said that a lot, like how our, you know, one of the powers we have gained over the last several years of doing this is the power to let go.
Yes.
And have no attachment to anything, but to any, you know, physical item. But what I'm saying is that for me, that collection, it's unintrusive. It does not take up any extra space. It takes up, you know, one little bit of extra small layer on the bottom of my longboard. Right. But what I'm doing here is I'm showing my rules. Like, my rules are, I'm not going to have just, you know, a collection of something taking up room in my house. Mm-hmm. I'm certainly not going to be cluttered. There are ways that Mariah and I live our lives. And those stickers that I have on the bottom of my longboard, it does not affect the way that Mariah and I really want to live our lives. So that's the question asked. It's not, is it okay for a minimalist to collect things? It's the things that I want to collect as a minimalist, is it going to interfere with the way that I want to live my life?
And he used some interesting words in there to follow up on that. One word that I wouldn't use, he was talking about celebrating these objects. I don't want to celebrate the material possessions in my life. And I think, instead of celebrate, the word I would probably use is appreciate. And if you can shift, it's a slight shift in mindset, but it changes everything, especially with those 2 words that you just mentioned, Ryan, letting go. Yep. Because it allows you, if you can appreciate the thing without celebrating it, it increases your ability to be able to let go. A few other words that I would use there is, instead of celebrating the possessions, instead of the possessions being, well, or maybe some of them are useful. In fact, that's a word that he used. He said, I want to celebrate their beauty or their craftsmanship or their usefulness. And I think that's great. I want to appreciate the beauty. I want to appreciate the craftsmanship. I want to appreciate how useful those objects can be. Not all of them are going to be useful, though, right? We talk about adding value. Something adds value if it serves a purpose. That means it's useful. Or if it brings me joy. That can be a piece of artwork on the wall. It can be the art of my book collection, right? My bookshelf of books. I can appreciate the beauty of that, even if I'm not getting the same sort of functionality out of it. And the thing that I'm thinking about here, though, is those items that are being collected are magnifying my experience of life. They're augmenting the experience of life. They amplify my experience of life. And if I can say that, if I can say it augments, it amplifies, it supplements, it magnifies, it appends my experience of life, then that's great. Too often, though, our collections end up getting in the way. I think of, if I go back to that DVD collection, a lot of that just sort of made its way to my basement eventually because I was having trouble letting go of it, because I was celebrating that collection. Look at all these things I have. What does it say about me as a person? Well, I'm a complete person without those things, right? And hopefully those things will augment my experience of life instead of just trying to be a part of my life. The other thing that I think about here is those collections, those items that we collect. Quite often we like those things, but sometimes we just liked those things, meaning I think I'm supposed to hold on to this collection because once upon a time I liked it. Or maybe I told myself I liked it and I didn't actually like it. And when we get to that point where it's like, well, I don't like it now, I liked it before. And he mentioned he had baseball card collections and other things that he had no problem getting rid of. And I think that's great. And so maybe the thing to keep asking here is, do I still like this? Is it still appropriate for my life? And if not, then there's some sort of weird imaginary value there, right? And because nothing is inherently meaningful, I mean, even money is meaningful only because it's only valuable because we say it has a value. Like, I agree that $1 is worth $1, and you agree that same piece of paper is worth $1. Once upon a time, it was gold and silver coins, and before that, it was seashells that people all agreed, like, this is the currency we use to give to each other. If I try to pay you in seashells now, I would think I was a crazy person.
Oh, Josh, you could pay me in seashells anytime.
and that's just because the things have the value that we say they have, and we're agreeing that they all have the same sort of value, but realizing that there isn't this intrinsic value in the thing. And so that helps me let go, because I realize that, like, the thing either adds value to my life or it goes back to the thing with my Al Pacino scripts. It was something that I was supposed to own. For whatever reason, I just told myself, like, well, I'm supposed to own this. I'm supposed to collect this. This is what people do. They have collections. They have their own little things that they like. And, man, to tell you the truth, I didn't even like it. I didn't spend much time reading over those scripts. I didn't even appreciate those things. I celebrated them, and that was actually the problem.
Yeah.
All right, I'd love to send Ramos a copy of our book. It's an essay collection called Essential. So, Sean, if you could reach out to him. There's a whole chapter in there about stuff. There's a chapter about minimalism and then a second chapter about stuff. There's 12 chapters in total, 12 areas of living a more intentional life. It's on audiobook if you want to send that to him. If you like the podcast, you'll like the audiobook, but it's also in book and ebook as well. Sean, if you could reach out to him and get him a copy of Essential, I would appreciate that. All right, our next question is from Molly in San Francisco.
I'm calling because I have a question about what to do with things like trophies and medals. I'm on a Dragon Boat team, and in the last 4 years, we've won some medals. And in the coming years, I assume we'll win some more medals. They don't necessarily bring me any value or joy, so I would like to get rid of them. But I don't know if it's something I should just toss in the garbage, or if somebody can actually use the medal, or if it's something I could actually donate somewhere. Do you guys have any idea, or do any of your listeners have any idea of someone that could do something with medals and trophies.
Man, what to do with all those trophies. Molly, congratulations on being an awesome athlete. It sounds like she's winning. Her and her team are winning a lot of trophies.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
I wrote something down here, Ryan, and I don't know how true this is, but it seemed at least profound to me in the moment. I wrote down, trophies look back, champions look forward.
Yeah, man.
And I think about, like, whenever we've theoretically won something, right? Like if I feel really good about it, an accomplishment or whatever, you've accomplished something, like it's okay to appreciate that moment, but like I don't want to just hug onto that trophy, just clench it for the rest of my life. Look at me, I've got this big trophy. And so I want to say congratulations to Molly, because she's already acknowledging that. She's saying, look, these don't really add value or they don't bring me joy, really. Yeah. And it sounds like they're even getting in the way, but she's like, well, should I throw them out? And my answer to you is no. And so I'm going to link to, in the show notes, we'll put a link to this Recycle Bank article. And I did a little bit of research here for you, Molly, because there's some stuff you can do with old trophies. So this is a Recycle Bank article. It says, old trophies and medals are often made from recyclable materials, but they also hold a value in their current form, and many can be reused. So that's another way of recycling, right, is to have them just be reused. A number of companies have programs dedicated to specifically to the art of refurbishing trophies. The best known of these is a company called Total Awards and Promotions in Madison, Wisconsin. There's also one called Lamb Awards and Engraving in Maryland. These programs break unwanted awards down for parts, rebuild new trophies and plaques with whichever parts are usable, and they recycle the rest. The rebuilt items are then donated to nonprofit organizations or resold. Both programs will allow you to ship trophies that are in sufficiently good condition for nominal shipping fee, basically. And so it goes on to talk about medals. While medals are accepted by these programs, there are also options dedicated specifically to giving medals a new life. There's a program called Sports Medal Recycling. It's a Massachusetts-based organization, and they contribute all their proceeds from recycling donated medals to fundraising for different charities. So basically, you do have some options there. There's another company called Medals for Metal. They accept old marathon, half marathon, and triathlete medals, and they give it to kids who are fighting serious illnesses. So there's some resources for you there to anyone else who is looking for a way. Like, there's weird things that we don't think about recycling, and then it's like, well, shit, I guess I'll just throw this old trophy out because I can't just give it to the Goodwill. It's like, look, it's my 8th grade basketball trophy. And then there was another article I'll put a link to. I won't go through all the stuff in here, but this one is from the Mother Nature Network, MNN. How to dispose of 8 odd, seemingly difficult to recycle items. And they talk about how to recycle prosthetic limbs, how to recycle your bras, crayons, old greeting cards. This one seemed odd. Your pet's fur. Your dentures.
Finally, got something to do with that collection of Max hair I've been building up.
Building up on your lint rollers.
Oh my goodness.
Your sex toys, you can donate them, which is actually, I need to read through this. And old trophies, we already talked about that. So 8 different things that you can go to there. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And here's the thing. I mean, we often don't think about it. Like, we collect these things and we accept them without thinking about, how am I going to get rid of this? I know we're out on tour, Ryan, especially when we do bookstore tours. I love going to these indie bookshops, but they almost always want to give us a coffee mug and a T-shirt every time we show up. And I mean, I can, if we've done 300 tour stops over the years.
Yeah,
and
I lost count.
Can you imagine going back home with 300 coffee mugs and 300 bookstore T-shirts? Like, I have to say no up front, because it makes the recycling a whole lot easier on the back end. If you say no now, I don't have to say no to the thing later on. It becomes more difficult later.
I see what you're saying, man. What you're saying is you don't have to worry about the clutter if you don't accumulate the clutter.
Oh my God.
That's genius, man.
Is that what we've been saying this whole time?
When I was looking for ways to recycle trophies, I must have Googled the same thing you did because I found the same 2 articles. The other thing that I found while Googling was this Pinterest, and I'll shoot this over to Sean so he can put it in the show notes. But it was this Pinterest link of, look at all these amazing things you could do with trophies. But some of them actually are kind of cool. I mean, you know, if you're into art and other art projects and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing we've talked about in the past. We've talked to our audience, and we've had different people who take these old sort of heirlooms, especially like old clothes that maybe people aren't going to use, and they'll take their mother's old jean jacket and frame it and turn it into some like piece of art that they can put on their wall, and they can then appreciate it as opposed to it sitting in a box in a closet somewhere that no one's ever going to use.
My favorite are heirloom tomatoes. Those are the best.
Do you have a collection?
I do. You know, when
my mom left me all these heirlooms. It's just a box of tomatoes.
It's a box of tomatoes. That's great. When I was listening to Molly's question, it made me think about my most prized trophy, and it was a 3rd place trophy I got. It was a 3rd place trophy I got in a 4-wheeler in an ATV race. And I was so proud of myself because, dude, it looks so easy when you see people like riding dirt bikes on a track, but like when you actually do it, it's
You've
like,
injured yourself so many times on those stupid bikes.
But on a 4-wheeler, it's like you're wrestling 400 pounds for like 15 laps, dude. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you're riding a mechanical bear.
I thought I was gonna die afterwards. Anyway, it was really awesome. But when it finally came time for me to like, you know, face this object and get rid of it, yeah, I don't even think I took a picture of it because I kind of thought what you thought. I'm like, Ryan, do you want to sit here and tell the story about how you won 3rd place in this ATV race, man? like thinking about it that way, I was like, yeah, dude, just get rid of the trophy. Like,
what's the uncle's name in Napoleon Dynamite? It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, yes, it does.
Or
I forget his name.
He's just reliving
Rico, maybe? No,
that sounds right.
Uncle Rico.
Sean's giving me the nod.
Is it Rico?
Yeah, where he's just sort of throwing the football everywhere. Like, imagine you like just pretending you're on the 4-wheeler.
Yeah,
guys, I was like this.
Yeah. I could jump a 40-foot tabletop.
Please tell me there are more than 3 people in this competition.
All right, so let's go on to the lightning round.
Molly, I want to leave you with one thing here. There's an essay that we have on our website called Collecting is Dangerous. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. It goes a little something like this. Collecting material possessions is not unlike hoarding. Take it from 2 former hoarders, collectors of stuff. The word collector just sounds way nicer. No matter how hard we try to hide behind euphemisms and other semantic trickery, though, the truth will always find us. Don't believe us? Look it up. The Oxford American Writer's Thesaurus lists the following synonyms under the first definition of collection. Here are the synonyms with collection, y'all. Hoard, pile, heap, stockpile. It's strange. There are myriad TV shows, websites, and clubs all dedicated to collecting things. Not creating things, but collecting them. We don't believe there's anything inherently wrong with owning material possessions, but we do wonder why so many of us collect things. Why do we give our belongings so much meaning? The things we collect become elements of us. Our collections become part of our identities. But what happens when we take away our collections? Are we not the same beautiful people? Actually, when we jettison our superfluous possessions, we discover we're already perfect, beautiful through and through. And that's one thing I have to think about. If I were to quickly turn this into a therapy session, Ryan.
Which we do a lot of the time. If it's not a maths podcast, if we don't turn it into that.
It's funny, with this new studio we're in, we actually have a therapist directly across the hall. And yeah, I'm tempted sometimes, like, because I still experience these same sort of feelings. Like I want to collect things. I want to bring new things into my home. And now that we moved out here to California and I'm slowly sort of populating our home with stuff, like the stuff that we need, I also feel this pull to like, oh, I need this decorative item. And actually next week on next week's podcast, we're going to do a separate podcast episode about decorations. And I think that one, Ryan, is really going to turn into a therapy episode for me. I'm going to need your counsel. And because
What do you don't have a lot of decorations.
I know, and that's the thing. I have very few, but I feel the sort of pull of man, maybe I should get this thing, or I saw that thing in the magazine.
That'll be a good combo.
I
All
do
right, we'll
appreciate.
save it. We'll
I
save it.
appreciate the aesthetic beauty, but I also need to be careful and realize, like, look, I'm complete without this. And so a preview for next week. The one thing that I want to talk about next week is I don't have the rule of like no artwork on my walls ever. My rule is actually the opposite of that. I'm complete without any artwork on my walls. And therefore, if I do end up wanting to put something on my walls in the future, I can go into it recognizing, like, this doesn't make me a more complete person. This isn't part of my identity. This is just something to perhaps make the space more beautiful, right? And is it actually going to bring me joy? Or is it what I'm supposed to do? And so I think that's something to think about. We'll talk a lot more about that next week. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear what you all have to say. Oh, wait, Molly. You're in San Francisco, which isn't far away from Los Angeles. And so we have an event this weekend, and we're filming a new documentary. It's called The Minimalists, Less Is Now. It's a follow-up to our Netflix documentary, Minimalism. We're going to dive a lot deeper into my life and Ryan's life, backstories, but we're building it around this talk. So we went out and we gave this 2 separate talks over the last year in 50 different cities, and now we're finally ready to record it in this beautiful space. So we found this space called Electric Pony Studios in Los Angeles on February 10th. We are recording a 3 p.m. show and a 7 p.m. show. The 3 p.m. show is already sold out, but there's still a few tickets left for the 7 p.m. show. So Molly, I'd love to give you a couple tickets if you're interested in being a part of that taping. So we're going to film that talk, and then we're going to build this next documentary around that talk. So, Sean, if you could reach out to Molly and maybe give her a couple tickets. If anyone else is interested, they can find ticket information over at our website, theminimalists.com. Just click on the tour page over there. You can find all of our dates there if there are still tickets left. All right, Ryan, we'd love to hear what the audience has to say. So if you have a comment or tip about collecting, including advice for any of our callers today, this is my favorite part of the show. In fact, we need more of these because we get a ton of questions. People call in all the time with questions. We can't possibly answer every single question. Ryan, we'd have to do 7 podcast episodes a day, I think, to answer everyone's question. But we really appreciate, heck, we celebrate your comments because they help us out. They help the people in our audience out because it gives people different perspectives. So it radically, I was going to say gradually, but actually it radically increases your chances of being on the show. If you have a comment or tip for any of our listeners today, or any comment or tip about collecting, then leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839, or you can just send a voice memo right from your phone to the email address podcast@theminimalists.com. We will air our favorite comments and tips on a future episode, and I'll learn a whole lot from it. Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It is time for our lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @The Minimalists during the lightning round. So Ryan and I, we do our best to answer each question with just a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We also put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you like. And you can now find all of our pithy quotes in one place, minimalmaxims.com. Our friend Jessica Lynn Williams, she curates all of our quotes and puts them there at minimalmaxims.com.
Our first lightning round question is from Kelly. Kelly asks, well, she writes in. This is a long one. Just give me a second. Now that we've got 280 characters on Twitter.
Well, actually, so we spoiler here. We actually didn't. We were recording this while we're off social media, so I had to go to our Patreon supporters for these questions.
Oh, that's why it's so long.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's a great question though. All right, so Kelly writes in, I am not a collector, but live among avid collectors, my husband and 2 children. I often feel overwhelmed by the volume of things they have. I've recently sold and donated many items I no longer enjoy, and I hope I'm setting a good example. Kelly, it sounds like you are. But it doesn't feel any less cluttered here. How can I lovingly express how I feel about their collections without making them feel like they can't collect the things they bring them joy.
Well, my short answer is, and I'll have a little aside, a little rant here. My short answer is clutter is in the eye of the beholder. And I think that you might be looking at their collection and saying it's clutter. They're looking at their collection and saying it's a collection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different, right? Now, it also changes over time. You might look at your old collection like I look at my old collections and say, the thing that was once a collection, the thing that I liked, I no longer like.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge difference between liked and like. And what you're telling me right now is there's something that you don't like, and it's something they do like.
Mm-hmm.
And so the metaphor for me is really the not nice way to ask this question is, how do I force the people in my family to get rid of their stuff? Now, she's asking it not in that way, and she's actually trying to be very considerate.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing many of the right things. Like I'm trying to set the example for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if what if I were to ask the question this way, Ryan? Like, how do I convince you to put your hand in the garbage disposal?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You'd be like, what?
You
Like
have to give me a pretty good argument.
right. And it's because why wouldn't you want to put your hand in the garbage disposal?
Right.
But seriously, no, why? Why wouldn't you want to put it in there?
Because my hand would be disposed of.
It would hurt. It would definitely hurt.
Yes.
Right? And you're going to feel pain in doing that. And I can't think of a good reason for you to do that right now. There could be one, to save your child's life or whatever. Like there's some reason to
insert good reason there.
Yeah. And the point being is you're not willing to make that decision that's going to cause you an immense amount of pain. And right now, all they're seeing in letting go of the clutter or the collection
is a hand in the garbage disposal.
Yeah, they're seeing the pain.
Right.
And it's because you have different expectations.
So what you're saying, I see
them.
what you're saying here, dude. What you're saying is Kelly should first pitch her family to put their hands in the garbage disposal.
Right.
And then suggest that they declutter a little bit.
Guys, wouldn't this be easier than putting your hand in a garbage disposal?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think maybe the best way to approach this for Kelly is, why not just ask them the same question you just asked us? How can I lovingly express how I feel about your collection?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. How can I tell you in a loving way that this is stressing me out? And how can you help me? Because here's the thing. You're not pigeonholed. You have options. You can get a divorce and never see your kids again. That's an option.
Yeah.
Probably not a good option.
Not the best option.
But here's the thing. No matter what circumstance we're in, there are times where that is a good option. For me, getting a divorce in my own life was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was also one of the best things that ever happened to my spouse. Now, obviously, I'm not telling Kelly to do that, but there are times where that is an appropriate response. With respect to just clutter, it has to do with, how can I get you to better understand what my position is?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the best ways to do that is to ask the question. And so here's another pithy answer for Sean to put in the notes here. Better questions lead to better solutions. And right now, Kelly, I think maybe you're asking some questions of them. Hopefully not just telling them. It doesn't sound like you are. That's what happens with a lot of us. We'll say, hey, Ryan, I think you need to get rid of your Hummel collection. And the truth is that Ryan is the thing. If I go to Ryan's house now, it may be cluttered for me. I don't think your house would be cluttered for 99.9% of the world. But when you and I lived together, Ryan, you respected what my needs were, because I think I did a pretty good job communicating what those needs are and asking the right questions. And it wasn't me begrudging you and saying you shouldn't have this or you can't do this. It was trying to explain where I was coming from. And I think one of the best ways to do that is start asking some better questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, my pithy answer is this: asking loved ones for support, especially when you've supported those loved ones, is the best help anyone could ask for. It's well, first off, Josh, you and I say this all the time about the best way to have someone support you is to support that person.
Yeah.
You and I cannot reiterate that point enough. When you go out of your way, the reason why I went out of my way to support you when we were roommates is because you go out of your way to support me. And we've always done that for each other. I don't know who, started supporting who first, but we've always done that for each other. but
without that expectation, right? So
and yes, without right, exactly.
I can't say, well, you know what? I'm going to help Ryan do the dishes today, so hopefully he'll help me repair my bike tonight or something. Like the contribution doesn't work like that,
right? And I have had other roommates where I will not go out of my way to support them because they did not go out of their way to support our living environment.
Or maybe you did go out of your way for a while, but then they took advantage of it.
Sure.
And then you're like, well, screw this. If people are taking advantage of my support, then why am I going to continue to be supportive?
Right. There is one particular situation where, like that's exactly how it unfolded, and I got out of that situation, no longer lived with that person.
Right.
But I was with him for about a year. We were roommates for a year and a half, 2 years. And it was, it was not the best situation, so I changed it.
Sure.
When I had that option. So yeah, obviously, Kelly's got a loving family, and she obviously supports them. So I feel like they're going to support her. So yeah, I'm echoing what you're saying, Josh. Is she just needs to lovingly ask them for their support. It doesn't mean that they have to get rid of their collection, but is there a way for them to still have their collection, but also maybe have the house feel a little less cluttered? So, Kelly, you're asking the right questions. You're asking us the right questions. You just now have to ask your family that same question.
Yeah, and maybe another question to ask them then, Ryan, is what problem does decluttering solve for them? Because right now, they don't see a problem at all, right? And if she's offering a solution to a problem that doesn't exist for them, then why would you want that?
Right.
If I keep telling you, Ryan, I've got the best nail polish that it's gonna make your hands look great, you're like, well, I don't have that problem, and so I don't really need that, right? And I think with your family is right now, they don't see what the solution is for. And so maybe you can answer this sort of quietly to yourself. Like, what problem does decluttering solve for you? And then what problem would decluttering or letting go of a collection solve for the other people in your family? And once you understand that, you'll start to understand what the benefits of that letting go are, and then you can better communicate that, and you can better open up the lines of communication. The last thing I'll say here is, I don't know how old you are, Kelly. Let's assume you're 30 years old here, and it took you 30 years to get to this point of letting go of a collection, and to expect someone else to instantly adhere to that same revelation you had 30 years in, or 35 years, or 40 years, or however long it's been. You know what? It's going to be really difficult for you to get someone to change over. If it took you 30 years to build a house, trying to get someone else to build it overnight is virtually impossible. And so keep in mind, they're not in the same place that you are, but you can show them the recipe that you put together to get there, and perhaps they can get there in a more direct fashion because you took a circuitous route to get there. Maybe there's a more direct path, but also don't expect it to happen overnight.
All right, our next question is from Haley. Haley asks, what fuels people's desire? Let me try that again, Millie. What fuels people's desire to collect in the first place?
Well, my short answer is, I think I have two short answers here. My first one is, we often collect things to mask our hoarding. And we just talked about that with the collecting is dangerous essay. Sometimes, it just sounds nice because to say I have a collection instead of saying I have a hoard.
Right.
But sometimes we have a hoard. I had a hoard of Al Pacino memorabilia, which sounds just terrible to say, right? I get a little embarrassed even saying that. If I had emotions, I would feel embarrassed right now. and I think
initiating embarrassment response. No, just wait, I'm just imagining I'm blushing. I'm imagining a hoarder, instead of saying like, "Oh, I'm a hoarder," they're like, "Look at my newspaper collection."
This is perfect. And I was going to wait till next week when we talk about decorations to talk about this, but as soon as you said that. So I have a bookshelf, right, with 40, 50, 60 books, however many books are. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't count my things, right? Mm-hmm. It fits all my books. And when I actually want to put a new book on there, I have to take one off and get rid of it. So because I'm not going to have a second, third book. At least I'm not going to right now. If I decide to in the future, I'm going to do so intentionally. But here's the thing. I was thinking getting this beautiful magazine rack that I've been looking at getting, because I each week I read the New Yorker, and Bex gets Dwell magazine, and occasionally we'll get the catalog from Design Within Reach, and I like looking at these magazines, but then having a magazine rack means, well, now I can hoard these magazines, right? But how is that different from my book collection? Well, I can honestly say how it's different, like, because there's different uses, and the books in my book collection are ones I like. They're my favorite books I lend out. With magazines, I don't have the same sort of affinity for magazines, and so for me, it would be a way to say, look at my magazine collection. No, it's just a hoard. It's a small hoard of magazines. And when I say it like that, I'm like, screw that. I'm not spending the $20 or whatever or $50 on this magazine rack. Why am I going to waste that money if just to supplement my hoard?
Right.
And so I think it's around the language we use. The other pithy answer that the minimal maxim that I would have here would be insecurity leads to collecting. And it's that thing I was talking about earlier, Ryan, is like, well, man, I will be a more complete person. Like, I'm incomplete now, but if I just have this collection, if I get this thing just right, then I will be just right.
Yeah, dude, that's right along the lines of my pithy answer. My pithy answer is having the complete collection will not by default make one complete. And I think ultimately what you're talking about is why a lot of people do collect. Some people truly have collections of things that they love, and it fuels their life, and it really does augment their life in a positive way. But I totally agree. There is a percentage of people, obviously not every single person, I don't even want to put a percentage on it, but certainly there is a percentage of people who they will feel like having a complete collection of something is going to help them somehow be complete as a human being. Someone actually told me, because I was talking about how I bite my nails all the time and pick up my nails. And someone was explaining to me, they're like, dude, that is a mental thing where, because I was explaining to them how I've got, like, right now I've got this little edge on my thumb, and I'm like, oh, if I could just get that one little edge and make that smooth, it'll be so perfect. And they were like, that is a symptom of, like, your overarching thoughts of yourself.
Yeah.
That you don't feel like you are 100% complete. So you pick your nails, and if you could just get that one edge a little bit more smooth, you could be that much closer to being complete. And it just, like, blew my mind when when they were explaining this to me.
So maybe the antidote to that is embrace the incompleteness, right? Because it is going to be incomplete. Everything's impermanent. And I mean, how do we even define complete anyway? Because eventually you're going to die. That's the only way to truly be complete, is you've completed your life and now you're dead. No matter what your thoughts are about afterlife or lack thereof, like, that's the end of a complete life. It's a complete life cycle. But in the meantime, you're going to be incomplete. And no matter how many things you collect, no matter how many hoards that you have,
no matter how many nails I bite,
you're not going to be complete.
Never going to be 100% complete, and that's okay.
Yeah, so man, there's some sort of metaphor in nail biting and collecting. You don't actually hang on to the nails or anything, do you?
No, of course not. That's crazy. I just want to be very clear for anyone listening out there, because I'm sure there's someone who, maybe is listening to this, maybe like their spouse is listening to this episode, and like they just happen to be catching some of it in the background while their spouse is listening to it.
Yes.
And they might be thinking, like, these guys are crazy. I have a collection. I love it. It adds a ton of value to my life. If you're that person, great. Like, I'm not going to be that person personally, and that's great too.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question then is, what is appropriate for my life?
Yeah.
And it's not, going back to those rules, it's not, my rule isn't, I'm not going to have a collection. My rule is the things that I bring into my life serve a purpose or bring me joy. And if a collection somehow falls under that, whether it's my bookshelf, or if I wanted to go get a Precious Moments collection sometime in the future because I thought it was so beautiful, then so be it. It just has to fit the rules of my own life. And the good news is, you get to make those rules as well. Hopefully some of our rules will help you out, but you get to decide. All right, it's time for our added value portion of the show. This is where we each talk about something that has added value to our lives recently. It doesn't mean we're recommending it for you, but it's something that has added value to our lives recently. And so this really has nothing to do with collecting, but I have a new album you can add to your music collection. Man, I have been playing this thing out. We were playing it in the car on the way to the airport the other day, Ryan, and Jack Harlow.
Yeah, that's great.
He has an album called, it's technically a mixtape. Who knows what the hell that means anymore? It's called Gazebo. It's a 10-track album, and it is so good. And then I saw the video. Let's put a link to the video. Man, he doesn't look anything like I imagine he would have looked like. He's a 19-year-old kid from Louisville, and it's so far it's my album of the year, album of 2018. Jack Harlow, Gazebo. In fact, if it's okay with Sean, I think we play a snippet of one of my favorite songs on there. He's got a bunch. Like, the whole thing is great. The second song on the album is called Routine. Let's play a snippet of that real quick. Actually, you know what? Let's listen to the intro from Gazebo. It's a song called Eastern Parkway, and it kind of lets you feel the vibe. It sets up the album really well, and it's a good song to play at night if you're just riding in the car. Eastern Parkway, Jack Harlow.
Did that come out this year? Was Belly this year?
That's last year.
Oh, that was last year.
Yeah. I think I recommended that on a past podcast.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, I'm just now getting into that album.
Yeah.
Even though you recommended it, and it's like, yeah, that's a really good one too. My point is like that Jack Harlow album is like it's the best, like, newest hip hop album I've heard.
Yeah.
And Belly was probably that, like, before Jack Harlow was my favorite newest hip hop album.
Yeah, I really dig both of those albums. You got anything that's added value to your life recently?
I do, man. I was so I went to Las Vegas. So I went to go visit our old friend from the corporate world. You remember Mike? Yeah.
He's my favorite person I've ever fired.
I love that story. Yeah, he's doing great, man. Him and his partner went out and visited them. So I went to this restaurant in Las Vegas called Saki Rock.
Okay.
Let me make sure I got this right. So there's this dude out there. It's Saki Rock. I'll make sure there's a link to it in the show notes. But there's this guy out there where he was like, "Hey man, you're the minimalist guy, man. If you like my food, like, do you mind giving it a mention?" I'm like, "No, like, I totally give recommendations all the time, man, on my podcasts or on Twitter or whatever. Like, as long as it's a genuine recommendation, we don't do any advertisements or anything." And long story short, the food it's the best sushi I've ever had in Las Vegas for sure. So if you're in the Vegas area, like, I would totally recommend it. But the food was awesome, and I'm like, all right, Nick, like, this was really good food. I will totally make sure to recommend this, man. And that's Saki Rock in Vegas, dude.
That's why I love being able to do this without advertisements, because it's like, yeah, we could make money from people paying us to talk about their thing, but for me, being able to recommend, the Jack Harlow album, because there was something about just listening to the album where I felt 19 again, in a way that was like optimistic and enjoying, like, just his album's called Gazebo, and I heard him in an interview. They're like, "Why'd you call your album Gazebo?" He goes, "I just appreciate sitting in a gazebo." He's like, "I just think they're really underrated." He's like, "I appreciate things that people generally don't appreciate, like park benches. Like, if I see a park bench, I'm going to go sit on the park bench." And I'm like, yes, that's being 19. Like, I remember, like, just going hanging out in a parking lot somewhere with friends at age 19, and here's the cool thing is, like, you can do that now, right? Like, Bex and I will just go, like, we went to LACMA this weekend and just like walked the aisles and took some edibles, and and like everything was instantly profound, right?
That's great.
And like, you can, as a 19-year-old, you don't have to be 19 to experience that feeling of optimism and youth. You can experience it through the music, and so that's why that album really stood out to me. It's about the experiences that we have, and not these collections. To get back to the collecting side of things, the collection of things. And so what you're talking about with the sushi restaurant is you had a great experience.
And I totally forgot to mention, speaking of music, they do a performance while you're eating too.
What do you mean?
It's like when I was there, it was kind of like a drag show, but it was freaking awesome. Like, the music was great, performance was great.
Okay.
And it's while you eat, and it's not intrusive at all. Like, a lot of the dinner theaters is kind of, it's weird, like, eating and watching theater, but like, they do it in a really awesome way.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt the point that you were making, but
you're not interrupting anything. We're having a conversation.
But I do totally agree, man. Well, I think what's cool too about our recommendations is, like, people know that they're, like, very genuine recommendations.
Yeah, and again, it may not be for you. Like, even your recommendation right now.
I know. I was gonna say, I didn't mean to rub it in your face.
So I can't do sushi right now because of the whole mercury poisoning thing, and so I can't do fish, seafood in general. But yeah, I can still appreciate your experience and your appreciation of the experience.
Absolutely.
And just because I like an album doesn't mean you will either. But Jack Harlow, if you're out there and you hopefully you can appreciate the fact that I appreciate your music, even though we're in completely different worlds. You were young enough to be my son.
Basically what he's saying, Jack, is can he be your dad?
Yeah, can I be your adoptive stepdad? I know you already have parents, but if you need another father figure, I'm happy to lend an ear, or any other.
Ella's gonna make a great stepsister.
That's right. You can follow her on Twitter at Ella Sandwich. All right, y'all. It's time for Right Here, Right Now. So we talk about what's going on in the lives of the minimalists. So, Ryan, we got some stuff going on.
We do?
I already mentioned we're filming a new documentary. If you want to be a part of that, you can be part of the live studio audience. The 3 p.m. show sold out in a few hours, so we added a second talk at 7 p.m. It's February 10th. You can find all the details to that over at theminimalists.com/tour. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. It's February 10th. Man, I can't wait to share this documentary with the world. I think it's going to be outstanding, and especially because we got Matt back on board. He directed the documentary, and we're going for a repeat of something meaningful. I feel like we really created something meaningful. It's time to go back to that and create something else meaningful for the folks out there. And we are ending our Less Is Now tour. We're doing the international dates in Australia. We have 7 dates. We're going to be in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Auckland. A few of those are already sold out, and a few others are really close to selling out. If you want tickets to any of our Australia dates, it's throughout the month of March. You can follow all the dates, all the theaters, all the ticket information over at theminimalists.com/tour. Also, if you want the show notes I always mention the show notes, but we everything we talk about today, whether it's links or articles or recommendations, all of these are in our show notes. We email those right to you. They're on our website. So you go over to theminimalists.com, enter your email address. We'll never send you spam because spam is disgusting, but we will email you the show notes anytime a new episode is out there. Also, new on our website, by the time this comes out, there's a new essay about how the minimalists are using social media in 2018. Maybe next week, Ryan, you and I can talk a little bit about some of the lessons we learned this month being off of social media, and what we learned, what we thought we would learn but didn't learn, and how we're going to use social media more deliberately going forward. There's an essay on the website right now. Also, if you're on our email list, you already have access to that. It goes out to your email. And this week on Overtime. So each week, Ryan and I record a private podcast. It's called The Minimalists Private Podcast, exclusively for our Patreon supporters, because advertisements suck. We refuse to pepper this podcast with advertisements. Instead, we are 100% listener supported. So we're answering the following question this week on the Overtime episode on the Minimalist Private Podcast. Anthony asks, I have 2 collections and I'm having an impossible time letting go. Impossible time. I've collected comic books for 15 years and Boy Scout patches for 30 years. I'm 35 years old now, and I've started to pare down the Boy Scout patches, but I keep finding myself buying more comics. So how do we deal with continuing to buy things that we're collecting and deal with that impulse of collecting? We're going to answer that on Overtime. Now, I know what you're thinking if you're listening to this at home. You guys are really going to make me log on to a website and to listen to that extended Overtime podcast? No. Here's the good thing about the Minimalist Private Podcast. It is a separate podcast feed, but it shows up right there in your podcast app next to this podcast. So if you listen to this podcast on, say, a Tuesday, on Wednesdays when the Overtime episode comes out, it shows up right in your podcast feed. You just need the private podcast link that we send out to you. Also, this Friday, we are going to publish on Patreon, also in that private podcast feed, our Philadelphia event. We did an event in Philadelphia last year, and we recorded it, and that's going out exclusively for our Patreon supporters. So a full hour-long event that we did. We answered questions live in front of that sold-out Philadelphia audience. Also, video podcast coming soon, as we mentioned at the opening of this. If you're interested in watching some snippets of the podcast or full episodes of the podcast coming soon, youtube.com/The Minimalist. If you do want to support us on Patreon, if you want to be a supporter of The Minimalist, just go to theminimalists.com, click on donate at the top there. Then you'll have the option to do Patreon or Venmo or PayPal. If you're a Patreon supporter, though, you get access to all of the private podcasts, also our monthly live stream that we do where we answer questions. We call it Ask the Minimalists Anything. So a bunch of really cool perks. Plus, you get advanced tickets to any event that we're going to do. You get access before the general public. That's all I got right now, Ryan. You got anything else for us?
I've got some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners if you're interested.
I am. Let's listen. Did I say listen?
You did say listen. But yeah, but what the heck? Let's listen.
Yeah, let's listen to these questions.
What would Freud say about that? Better yet, what would Freud say about that?
Hi, my name's Courtney and I'm from Abilene, Texas. I was calling with a comment for the young girl from the Horizons podcast. I just wanted to say that I personally was able to pay for my entire college through scholarships, and so I wanted to present that to her as an extra way to pay for college. She can Google them, she can use different scholarship resources, and so I think that's an extra way that she could earn money.
Hi, Josh and Ryan. This is Heather from San Diego, and I have a tip for Beth from your most recent episode called Resonate. Beth asked for advice about dealing with beauty products as a minimalist. I've been able to pare down my product collection quite a lot since I started my minimalism journey about a year ago. One thing that has helped me so much is joining the Project Pan community. This is a community on the internet, you could just search for Project Pan on YouTube and Instagram, that makes games and challenges out of using up your makeup. Everyone is very supportive. People get really excited when they hit pan on products and eventually use them up. Doing Project Pans has taught me how long it takes to use up products and helped me to buy a lot less. Being aware of expiration dates of makeup also helps to pare down your collection. Knowing that a foundation only has a year-long shelf life and takes about 6 months or more to use up will prevent you from buying or owning more than 2 at a time. I know Ryan mentioned the 20/20 rule, which doesn't always work, especially if you don't own only drugstore makeup products. Most makeup does cost more than $20. However, the 90/90 rule works pretty well for some makeup products when considering their expiration date. Remember that open tubes of mascara should be thrown out after 3 months. Every time you use it, more bacteria gets into the product, which is pretty dangerous considering how close the wand gets to your eye. Also, think about how you like to use makeup. Do you like to keep it simple, or do you like to have choices? If you like to have choices, there are so many versatile products on the market that many people already have in their collections. Consider rotating through your eyeshadow palettes, doing a 1 month, 1 palette challenge to give your older palettes some love. You can do this with lip products too. Challenge yourself to wear a different shade every day for a week. Finally, Beth, you mentioned wanting to purchase more ethically. I recommend looking into the cruelty-free movement. Cruelty-Free Kitty and Logical Harmony are great resources online. Best of luck on your journey.
Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I'm from Los Angeles, and this message is for the person that was on the Becoming episode, asking about what to do with religious items that she wants to get rid of, but she doesn't want to just throw in the trash. There are a lot of hospitals, Catholic hospitals, that have gift shops, and they would probably be happy to have a donation of a cross like hers that she could donate, and somebody else would be happy to have.
All right, Joe, that's it for this episode. If you have a question for the Minimalists, especially if you have a comment, please, we need more comments. We need your help on those. 406-219-7839. You can also email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com right from your phone. And if you leave here with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it. Every little thing that you gotta have, every little thing that you gotta have, you gotta reach for, and you gotta got a grand, boy, I bet that you'll be fine without it. So take your eyes away, or take